Welcome to News Beacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. On a humid September morning in Elabelle, Georgia, the quiet rhythm of rural life was shattered. The future of American industry, once full of promise, was suddenly interrupted in a way no one saw coming. The Hyundai Motor and LG Energy Solution battery plant, a sprawling project rising from Georgia's red clay, was meant to power the U.S. electric vehicle revolution and cement a new era of global cooperation. But on this day, it became the site of the largest ICE workplace raid in American history. Federal agents swept in with overwhelming force, detaining 475 workers in a matter of hours. Among them were over 300 South Korean nationals, engineers, technicians, and specialists whose expertise was essential to the plant's construction and future operations. The raid sent shockwaves through Georgia's business community and reverberated all the way to Seoul. Local officials scrambled to respond, while families and workers were left in limbo. The incident threatened a key U.S. economic partnership at a critical moment. President Trump quickly justified the action, insisting these workers were here illegally and that American jobs must come first. He framed the raid as a necessary step to protect U.S. interests, even as critics warned of the diplomatic fallout. The administration signaled this was just the beginning of a broader crackdown on undocumented labor in high-profile industries. The message was clear: no company, no matter how large or international, was above the law. For South Korea and the companies involved, it felt like an economic ambush, billions in investment and years of planning suddenly at risk. Executives watched in disbelief as their flagship project ground to a halt. The timing was explosive, just days after a high-profile U.S.-South Korea summit and a massive South Korean investment pledge. What was meant to be a celebration of partnership now looked like a diplomatic crisis in the making. Instead of partnership, South Korean firms saw their employees led away in handcuffs, their flagship project frozen in uncertainty. The sense of betrayal was palpable, and the future of the plant hung in the balance. The future of the plant and the alliance between the two nations was now in doubt. Billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, and the trust between allies were all at stake. What began as a symbol of progress had become a flashpoint for international crisis. The world was watching, and the next steps would shape the future of U.S.-South Korea relations for years to come. The aftermath was even more incendiary than the raid itself. U.S. authorities released footage of South Korean engineers and technicians in heavy shackles, images usually reserved for dangerous criminals. These visuals, broadcast across South Korea, sparked outrage and humiliation. Protests erupted in Seoul, with citizens demanding an apology from the U.S. The symbolism of the chains cut deep, evoking memories of past indignities and disrespect. South Korean leaders faced mounting pressure to respond forcefully. The corporate world took notice. If this could happen to Hyundai and LG, no foreign company was safe. The goodwill built over decades evaporated overnight. The Trump administration's show of strength had become a global warning. America's welcome was no longer guaranteed. The message to investors was chilling. Political agendas could override partnerships at any moment. Trust was shattered. Why were so many South Korean workers in Georgia? The sight of foreign engineers and technicians on American factory floors might seem surprising at first, but it's a window into a much larger story about the future of American industry. The answer reveals a critical gap in America's industrial ambitions, a gap that goes beyond just a shortage of workers. It's about missing expertise and the urgent need to build new skills for a new era. Building a high-tech battery plant isn't just about putting up walls and plugging in machines. It requires deep technical know-how, specialized knowledge that these Korean specialists brought with them. They were there to install, calibrate, and fine-tune proprietary equipment, and to train American workers on processes that were entirely new to the region. Training a local workforce for this advanced technology takes years, not months. It's a long-term investment involving classroom instruction, hands-on practice, and ongoing mentorship to ensure that American workers can eventually run these factories independently. The plan was always to transfer knowledge, not to replace American jobs. These foreign experts were meant to be temporary guides, helping to build a foundation for a new generation of American manufacturing talent. But U.S. visa policy lagged behind reality, forcing companies to rely on short-term, often ambiguous workarounds. The process was slow, confusing, and didn't match the speed of industrial change. For years, authorities had quietly tolerated this arrangement, understanding that it was necessary for progress, even if the paperwork didn't always line up. The Georgia raid ended that understanding overnight, sending shockwaves through the industry and leaving both companies and workers in limbo. The government claimed visa violations, but the real issue was a system unprepared for the demands of modern manufacturing, a system that hadn't caught up to the realities of global competition and rapid technological change. The contradiction was stark. America wanted rapid industrial growth, but choked off the very expertise needed to achieve it. The push for innovation clashed with outdated rules. The result, progress stalled, and trust eroded between companies, workers, and the government. Factories that were supposed to be humming with activity instead sat silent, waiting for answers. The left hand didn't know what the right was doing. In the race to build America's future, the country found itself tripping over its own feet, caught between ambition and reality. The business fallout was immediate and severe. Within hours, shockwaves rippled through boardrooms and trading floors, as executives scrambled to assess the damage and investors braced for more bad news. LG Energy Solution abruptly postponed the plant's opening, pushing back production timelines and freezing a critical supply of EV batteries. The move sent suppliers and automakers into a frenzy as they scrambled to find alternatives and keep their own operations afloat. Hyundai responded with a total ban on U.S. business travel for its staff, signaling deep mistrust and a sudden halt to cross-border collaboration. The company's leadership feared that any presence in the U.S. could expose employees to unpredictable risks. Other Korean giants like Samsung quickly tightened travel restrictions, wary of unpredictable U.S. enforcement. Meetings were canceled, deals put on hold, and a sense of unease spread through the upper echelons of corporate Korea. The raid triggered a sweeping reassessment of America as an investment destination. 10 of 14 major Korean firms considered shifting billions elsewhere. Boardrooms buzzed with urgent discussions about risk, contingency plans, and the future of their U.S. operations. Projects in Louisiana and Texas, including Samsung's $37 billion chip factory, were suddenly in jeopardy. Construction slowed, and contractors faced uncertainty about whether to continue or pull out entirely. The message to global business was clear: even strategic multi-billion-dollar projects could be derailed overnight. No investment, no matter how large or vital, seemed truly safe. The U.S. had effectively pulled out the welcome mat, risking not just one plant, but an entire wave of foreign investment. The atmosphere of trust that had taken decades to build was evaporating in real time. The cost of unpredictability was now measured in billions. Analysts warned that the long-term impact could be even greater, as companies reconsidered their global strategies. America's reputation as a safe haven for business was on the line, with its status as the world's top investment destination suddenly in question. The chill was felt far beyond Georgia. From Seoul to Frankfurt, Tokyo to London, executives watched nervously, wondering if their own investments might be next. The stakes had never been higher. The world was watching, and the next move would shape the future of global investment for years to come. The crisis quickly escalated to a diplomatic emergency. South Korea's foreign minister rushed to Washington, demanding answers and the release of detained nationals. A chartered Korean air flight waited in Atlanta, ready to repatriate the workers and avoid long-term bans. But even this effort was delayed by U.S. authorities, deepening the sense of dysfunction and insult. The image of a plane stranded on the tarmac became a symbol of broken trust. All this unfolded just days after a summit celebrating the U.S.-South Korea alliance. The gap between public rhetoric and reality was exposed. Decades of partnership were suddenly in question. Seoul was left wondering if America was still a reliable ally. The diplomatic rift was now impossible to ignore. The alliance was on the brink. The Trump administration's messaging was a study in contradiction. On one hand, officials touted a hardline crackdown, no more gray areas, no more exceptions. Companies were warned, the old rules no longer applied. Yet, almost immediately, President Trump promised to make it easier for Korean firms to bring in needed experts, an olive branch to business in Seoul. The result was confusion and paralysis. Were companies supposed to halt projects or trust in new promises? There was no clear strategy, just a dizzying back and forth between populist rhetoric and business pragmatism. For Hyundai, LG, and others, the risk of further chaos was real. The lack of predictability threatened to freeze investment and innovation. America's partners were left guessing. The raid didn't just threaten a factory, it shook the US-South Korea economic alliance to its core. South Korea is a top US trading partner, with over $240 billion in annual trade and billions in direct investment. Korean companies have built factories, research centers, and created tens of thousands of American jobs. This partnership was built on trust, stability, and mutual benefit. The Georgia raid sent a destructive signal political winds could turn a partner into a target overnight. The foundation of trust, built over decades, was suddenly at risk. Korean firms began to question whether America was still a safe, reliable place to invest. The future of billions in investment, and thousands of jobs, hung in the balance. The alliance was no longer a given. The world was watching. Hyundai's US presence is massive. $20 billion invested, thousands of Americans employed, and factories revitalizing entire regions. The company builds cars in America for Americans, supporting stable, well-paying jobs. The Georgia battery plant was to be the next leap forward, anchoring the domestic EV supply chain. By investing in US manufacturing, Hyundai was aligning with American interests, reducing reliance on China and securing future jobs. The raid threatened this entire ecosystem, putting not just one project, but thousands of American jobs at risk. In trying to protect a handful of jobs, the administration jeopardized an entire industrial partnership. The cost of alienating Hyundai was far greater than anyone imagined. America's economic health and industrial future were now intertwined with the fate of this alliance. The stakes extended far beyond Georgia. The lesson: foreign investment is not guaranteed, it must be earned. The Georgia raid forces a fundamental question: is this protectionism or economic self-sabotage? The administration argued it was defending American jobs and sovereignty, an America First doctrine in action. But critics saw it as short-sighted, confusing symptoms for causes. The real issue: America lacks the skilled labor and visa systems needed for modern manufacturing. By targeting foreign experts, the US halted projects that would have created thousands of jobs. The risk is unraveling the very economic fabric these policies claim to protect. Alienating key allies like South Korea could drive away the investment America needs. The world is watching to see if the US builds walls or bridges. The choice will define America's economic future for decades. The stakes could not be higher.